The first thing Ella felt was the cold wine running down her face. Israel had just emptied an entire glass over her head, and now it was dripping off her chin, out of her hair, soaking into the white dress she'd picked out 3 weeks ago for tonight. And the rooftop restaurant, 30 floors above a glittering city, went dead silent. Wine ran off her jaw and pooled on the white tablecloth, spreading through the anniversary dinner she'd ordered for two, while she waited for the man she loved. Israel stood over her, laughing. Look at you, he said loud enough to carry to every frozen table. Still sitting here alone, pretending somebody actually wants you. Beside him, Jasmine covered her mouth and laughed. Ayla didn't answer. She just reached for a napkin. And somehow the quiet, the calm, the refusal to break made Israel even angrier. You don't have anything to say? He snatched the plate of food off her table, lifting it high. Maybe this'll help you remember who you are. And then a distant roar rolled across the evening sky. Everyone turned. Beyond the glass railing, out over the harbor, a sleek black private jet was descending toward the private landing strip. Low, close, impossibly close to the restaurant, and along its side, in enormous illuminated letters, was a single word. AYLLA. Israel's smile fell off his face. Jasmine stopped laughing. The restaurant manager slowly lowered the phone he'd been recording with. And AYLLA, for the first time all night, looked up, because she recognized that jet. She'd seen it once before, in a photograph, on the phone of the man she was supposed to be celebrating her first anniversary with tonight. And he had just landed. Now, before I tell you what happened when that jet door opened, be honest with me for a second. How many of you have sat somewhere, dressed up, waiting for someone who made you feel like you weren't worth showing up for? If that's ever been you, a comment. I waited too right now, because this next part is for you. And I want to know how many of us are in this together. And if you want to watch the man who mocked her regret every single word, hit that like button, because Ayla's about to find out she was never actually alone. But to understand what's coming, you have to know why she was sitting up there by herself in the first place. Let's go back. 6 months earlier, AYLLA Okafor had been the happiest she'd ever let herself be. She was 26, radiant, the kind of woman who turned heads in a room and never seemed to notice she'd done it. Deep brown skin, long dark waves, a smile she gave too freely to people who didn't deserve it. She ran a small event design business she'd built from nothing. And she loved hard, all the way, with nothing held back. And she loved Israel. Israel Boateng was charming in the way that's easy to mistake for kind. Handsome, quick, always talking about the big life he was going to build. When they met, he made AYLLA feel like the center of the world. He remembered the little things. He showed up, at first. You're my good luck, he used to tell her. Everything got better the day I met you. She believed him. She built her whole heart around believing him. Hold on to that phrase. You're my good luck. Because in about 4 minutes, Israel is going to decide that his good luck ran out, and that it was somehow all her fault. Watch how fast a man turns on you when his own life stops working. Israel had a business too. Or he called it a business. Import-export deals, opportunities. The truth was messier. He was always one big score away from making it, and the big score never came. And slowly, over months, the charming man AYLLA fell for curdled into someone else. It started small. He stopped saying thank you. Then he started correcting her in front of people, little jabs dressed up as jokes. Then he started disappearing, coming home late, phone face down on the table. She still remembered the first dinner party where it turned. A friend had complimented AYLLA's event business, said it was really taking off, and Israel had laughed and said, yeah, well, somebody in this house has to have a real job. The table went quiet. AYLLA laughed too, because that's what you do, and later in the car she'd said gently, that hurt my feelings, babe. It was a joke, Israel said. You're so sensitive. This is what I mean. I can't say anything. I just see you're doing it again. Making me the bad guy for one comment. He'd shaken his head, wounded, like he was the one who'd been slighted. Everything's a whole thing with you. And AYLLA, this was the part she was ashamed of later, had apologized to him for being hurt. And every time his own deals fell apart, he found a way to make it about her. I can't focus with you always needing something, he'd snap, when she'd asked him nothing at all. You know what your problem is? You think small. You've always thought small. That's why I feel stuck. Ayla shrank herself, the way people do. She asked for less. She took up less space. She told herself it was a rough patch, that the sweet man was still in there somewhere, that if she just loved him better, it would come back around. Then she found out about Jasmine. Of course there was a Jasmine. There's always a Jasmine. But here's what makes this one sting. Ayla didn't find out from a text or a lipstick stain. She found out because Jasmine wanted her to. Watch. Jasmine made sure Ayla knew. A follow request from an account with no name. Then a story tag. Then a photo, Israel, at a restaurant Ayla had never been taken to. His arm around a glossy, smirking woman who looked directly at the camera like she was looking directly at Ayla. When Ayla confronted him, Israel didn't even bother to deny it well. You did this, he said. You made me feel small in my own house. A man needs to feel like a king. Jasmine gets that. You never did. I gave you everything, Ayla said. You gave me pressure. He grabbed his jacket. That's not the same thing. He left that night, and Ayla sat on the floor of the apartment they'd shared and cried until there was nothing left, and then she got up and she started over. Because that's what she did. That was the thing nobody gave her credit for. Ayla always got back up. She threw herself into her business. She took the clients she'd been too distracted to chase. And somewhere in those months of quietly rebuilding, she met someone. Not the way you meet someone in a movie. The way you meet someone when you've stopped looking and have no energy left to perform. And this is where the story turns. Because the man she met is the reason there's a jet with her name on it descending over that harbor. But she has no idea yet what he really is. Neither do you. Keep watching. It happened at a disaster of an event. Ayla had been hired to design a corporate gala, a big one, the kind of job that could change her business. And 3 hours before doors, the whole thing was falling apart. The rental company had delivered the wrong everything. The venue's power was flickering. Her one assistant had called in sick. And Ayla, in a back hallway, was on the phone with a vendor who was screaming at her about money she'd already paid. I paid the deposit, she said, calm, even though her hands were shaking. I have the confirmation. I'm looking at it. So you're going to bring the correct linens, or I'm going to make sure every planner in this city knows exactly how you treat the people who... She didn't hear the man walk up behind her. When she hung up, she turned, and there he was, leaning against the wall, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Tall, black hair, a little wild, a plain black shirt, silver chains at his throat, a delicate flower inked on one muscled forearm, dark eyes that were calm and somehow a little dangerous, like still water you couldn't see the bottom of. You handle pressure well, he said. Sorry, this is a staff hallway. The event's not till... I own the building, he said, mildly, like it was nothing. Jumin-chan, I heard someone winning an argument through a wall. I wanted to see who it was. He owns the building. Remember that, casual as it sounds, because Jumin-chan owns a lot of things, and the parts of his life he owns quietly are far more dangerous than a building. But Ayla doesn't know any of that. All she knows, in this moment, is that a handsome stranger just watched her have the worst 3 hours of her professional life. Watch what she does. It's the reason he never forgets her. Ayla, mortified, straightened up. Okay, well, since you own the building, your power keeps flickering, your loading dock is a maze, and your event's about to be a beautiful disaster that everyone will blame on me. So if you actually want to help instead of watch, I could use a working circuit and someone tall to reach the drape rods. Min-chan blinked. Most people, he said slowly, when they find out I own the building, get very polite very fast. I don't have time to be polite. I have 90 minutes and a lighting rig held together by prayer. She was already moving. You can be offended or you can be useful. Honestly, either's fine, but pick fast. And then he did something his own people would have told you he almost never did. He laughed. You need help, he said, pushing off the wall. And instead of asking nicely, you gave me a job. Is it working? I'm rolling up my sleeves, aren't I? Then it's working. She handed him a coil of cable, without looking back. Congratulations. You've been promoted to my assistant. The pay is terrible and the boss is stressed. I've had worse offers. Somehow I doubt that. And he did. The most powerful man in that building, though she didn't know it yet, and spent the next 3 hours running cable, hauling tables, and holding drape rods for an event designer he'd never met because she'd been too busy and too honest to flatter him. By the time the doors opened, the gala was flawless. By the time it ended, Ju Min-chan had learned 3 things about Ayla Okafor. That she never once used the crisis to ask him for anything, that she thanked every catering staffer by name, and that when a drunk executive got handsy with a young server, it was AYLLA who stepped between them without a second's hesitation. He'd spent his whole life around people who wanted things from him. And here was a woman who handed a powerful man on the worst night of her month, had simply put him to work and treated him like a person. "Why'd you step in for that server?" he asked her at the end, both of them exhausted against a wall, the last gas trickling out. Ayla shrugged. "Because nobody stepped in for me once. You don't forget what that feels like, so you become the person who steps in." Min-chan looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said quietly. "You don't forget what that feels like." "Sounds like you know." "I know." He didn't explain, and she didn't push, and somehow that mutual not pushing felt more intimate than a confession. He glanced at her. "You never ask what I do. Everyone asks what I do, usually in the first 2 minutes. You held a drape rod for 3 hours without complaining, and you thanked my caterer for the shrimp. I figured whatever you do, you're not a jerk about it." She smiled tiredly. "That's honestly more than I know about most people I've worked with for years." "That's it? That's your whole assessment of me? Should there be more?" Min-chan was quiet. Then, "Can I take you to dinner? Not a work thing, a real one." Ayla considered him. The calm eyes, the ink, the strange stillness of a man who clearly wasn't used to asking for things. "Dinner," she said. "One dinner, and you don't get to own the restaurant." He actually laughed. "That severely limits my options." "Then you'll have to be charming instead of rich. Good luck." "I may be out of practice." "I'll grade generously," Ayla said, and that was the beginning of everything. Two people who both know exactly what it feels like when nobody steps in. That's not a meet cute. That's two people recognizing something in each other that the world beat into them the hard way. And it's the foundation of everything that's about to happen on that rooftop. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because between this night and the jet, Israel comes crawling back. Oh yes, watch. Here's the thing about men like Israel. They never want you until someone else does. Word travels. And the word going around was that Ayla Okafor's business was suddenly booming, that she'd landed a whale of a client, that she'd designed a gala for one of the most exclusive buildings in the city, that doors were opening for her that used to be locked. What the word didn't include, because Ayla never advertised it, was why those doors were opening, or who had started opening them. So Israel showed up. He caught her outside a coffee shop, all warmth and rehearsed regret, Jasmine nowhere in sight. "Ayla, wow, you look incredible." He put a hand on his chest. "Listen, I've done a lot of thinking. I made mistakes, big ones. I let the stress get to me and I took it out on the best thing that ever happened to me. Israel, Jasmine was a mistake, a distraction. I know that now." He stepped closer. "I've been hearing about how well you're doing. And I'm proud of you, genuinely. And I thought maybe we owe it to ourselves to try again. For real this time." Ayla looked at him. And here's the thing. A year ago, those words would have undone her. She'd have cried and forgiven him and handed him back the keys to her whole life. "You didn't come back because you miss me," she said slowly. "You came back because you heard I was doing well. That's not when I had nothing. You poured your failures on me and left. Now that I have something, you're proud of me." She almost laughed. "You're not proud of me, Israel. You're hungry. There's a difference, and I finally know it." "Wow." Israel put a hand to his chest, wounded. "That's cold, Ayla. I come here, I open up, I apologize, and this is what you didn't apologize. You said you made mistakes. That's not the same thing. An apology has my name in it. An apology says what you did. You just said the word mistakes like it was weather that happened to you." She shook her head. "I used to fall for that. The soft voice, the sad eyes, the almost apology, not anymore." "So that's it? You're just better than me now?" "I'm not better than you," Ayla said. "I'm just done being worse for you. That's all it ever was, Israel. I made myself smaller so you'd feel bigger. And I'm not doing it again. Not for you, not for anybody. She sees him clearly now. That's growth. Real, hard-won growth. But Israel doesn't take rejection like a man who's grown. He takes it like a man who's been embarrassed. And an embarrassed man is a dangerous, petty thing. Watch what he does with that. Israel's warm mask slipped just for a second, and AYLLA saw the old cruelty underneath. You think you're better than me now? He said. Because you got a couple good clients, you'll come running back. You always do. He straightened his jacket. You'll see. Give it a month. But AYLLA didn't come running back. And that, the not running back, ate at Israel more than the breakup ever had. Because a man like Israel needs to win the ending. He needs the last word. He needs to prove he came out on top. So when he found out, through a mutual friend, that AYLLA had a big romantic anniversary dinner planned at an exclusive rooftop restaurant, celebrating 1 year with some new man nobody had met, Israel decided he was going to be there. To ruin it. To prove, in front of a room full of people, that AYLLA was still the same pathetic woman he'd left. He brought Jasmine. Of course he did. He walked into that restaurant to humiliate her. He had no idea, and none, who AYLLA had spent the last 6 months quietly falling in love with. He thought he was crashing a date with some ordinary man. Let's go back to that rooftop now. You're finally ready to understand what you saw at the very beginning. AYLLA had gotten to the restaurant early. She always did. Old habit. The girl who learned young that being early meant being ready, meant never being caught off guard. She wore the white dress. She'd had her hair done. And she sat at the reserved table by the glass railing, 30 floors up, with the whole Golden City spread out below her, and she waited for Jumin Chan. He was running late. He'd texted, a work thing, an unavoidable thing. I'll be there, I promise. Order the wine. Don't wait on the food. I'm coming. Save me a seat where I can see your face. So she waited. Happily. Because she'd learned that some men are worth the wait. That there's a difference between a man who makes you wait because you don't matter and a man who's racing across the city to get to you. She was smiling at her phone when a shadow fell over the table. Well, said a voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Look who's eating alone. AYLLA looked up. Israel. And Jasmine, on his arm, in a dress that cost too much and a smirk that cost her nothing. Israel. AYLLA kept her voice even. What are you doing here? Same as you. Nice dinner. Beautiful view. He pulled out the chair across from her, Minchan's chair, and dropped into it. Jasmine perched on the arm. Except I'm not by myself. So, where's this mystery man everyone's whispering about? The big anniversary, 1 whole year? He made a show of looking around. Huh, don't see him. You get stood up, AYLLA? He's on his way. He's on his way. Israel repeated it in a mocking little voice, and Jasmine giggled. Sure he is. You know what I think? I think there's no man. I think you invented a whole boyfriend so people would stop feeling sorry for you. He leaned back, still telling stories, still pretending somebody wants you. A whole year, though. Jasmine spoke up for the first time, examining AYLLA with lazy amusement. That's the story, right? 1 year, and he can't even show up for the anniversary. She made a little pout. That's embarrassing, babe. I'd have canceled and stayed home. I didn't ask for your opinion, Jasmine. You didn't have to. It's sitting right there on your face. Jasmine smiled sweetly. The face of a woman who got stood up and is too proud to say it. Every word out of his mouth is designed to make her small in front of a room. And here's the cruelest part. She can't prove him wrong. Because Minchan isn't there yet. She just has to sit in it. If you've ever had to sit in someone's cruelty with no way to defend yourself, you know exactly how long these next 60 seconds feel. Watch her hold on. Please just go, AYLLA said quietly. I don't want a scene. Enjoy your evening, truly. But Israel didn't want to go. Israel wanted the ending. He'd come all this way for it. You always do this, he said louder now, playing to the tables around them. Act all calm and superior. Little Miss Dignity. You know why you're really alone up here? Because you're exhausting. Because no man can stand being around a woman who thinks she's better than everybody. Facts, Jasmine murmured, examining her nails. And here, for about 10 seconds, the universe gave the whole room a gift. Because Israel, determined to look like a big man in front of his ex, snapped his fingers at a passing waiter and demanded the most expensive champagne on the menu, by name, loudly, mispronouncing it. The The $2,000 one chilled now. The waiter, young, harried, juggling 4 tables, grabbed a bottle from the ice bucket, poured Israel a tall triumphant glass, and hurried off. Israel lifted it, swirled it like he'd seen rich men do, and took a long, performative sip, meant to say, "This is the life you missed out on, AYLLA." Then he spat it halfway across the table. What is that?" he gagged, clutching his throat. That's water. That's sparkling water. Do you have any idea how much I..." "Sir," the waiter said, reappearing mortified. "I'm so sorry. That was the table behind you ordered the mineral water. I must have..." "You gave me water." Israel was on his feet now, red-faced, spluttering, while at the next table, a businessman lost his entire composure into his napkin. Jasmine grabbed his sleeve and hissed through her teeth, Israel, please, you're embarrassing me." "I'm embarrassing you," he snapped at her. And for one glorious moment, the two of them turned on each other, bickering in furious whispers, and the whole rooftop got to breathe, and AYLLA, wine yet to come, dignity still intact, pressed her lips together and looked hard at the skyline so nobody would catch the smile fighting its way onto her face. The universe has a sense of humor even when people don't. And Israel just got a tiny preview of the entire night ahead of him. The harder he reaches for big, the smaller he lands. But that little crack, that flash of the room laughing at him instead of her, that's the thing that flips a petty man into a cruel one. Watch him decide he has to win the night back. Watch him go too far. Israel dropped back into his chair, humiliated, and his eyes came back to AYLLA with something meaner in them than before. AYLLA reached for her water glass. Her hand was steady. She would not cry in front of him. She had cried an ocean over this man already, and she was done giving him her tears. And that steadiness, that refusal to break, is what made Israel snap. Because a cruel man can survive anything except being ignored. He grabbed the wine bottle from her table. "You got nothing to say? Nothing?" And he poured her glass full, and while the whole rooftop watched, he lifted it and he threw it in her face. The cold shock of it, the gasp of the room, the wine running down her cheeks and into the collar of her white dress. "Look at you," Israel said, standing over her, laughing, "still sitting here alone, pretending someone actually wants you." And AYLLA, wine dripping off her chin, reached for a napkin, calm, silent, refusing, even now, to give him the collapse he'd come for, which made him angrier. He grabbed the plate off her table and lifted it high. "Maybe this will help you remember who you..." And that's when the sky roared. "Now you're caught up. The jet you saw descending at the very beginning, the one with her name in lights, it's not a coincidence. And it's not a rescue she begged for. It's the answer to a question Israel never thought to ask. Who is she actually here to meet?" Watch the plate. Watch his face. Watch everything change. The roar rolled across the evening sky, and every head on that rooftop turned toward the harbor. The sleek black private jet came down low over the water toward the private strip, close enough that its lights washed across the restaurant's glass railing, and there, along its side, in letters 10 feet tall and glowing gold, AYLLA. Israel froze with the plate still lifted over his head. Jasmine's smirk died. The restaurant manager, who'd been quietly filming the whole humiliation for who knows what, slowly lowered his phone, mouth open. And AYLLA, wine dripping down her face, looked up at the jet. And something in her chest unclenched, because she knew that jet, and she knew what it meant, and she knew that the waiting was over. "Put the plate down, Israel," she said quietly. What is that?" Israel's voice had gone thin. That's a coincidence. That's just some rich guy's plane. It has my name on it. That doesn't mean anything. That's not..." AYLLA stood up, wine-soaked, calm, done. "You wanted to meet the man I've been seeing," she said. "The one you said didn't exist. The one you said I invented." She wiped her cheek with the napkin, unhurried. "He's about to walk off that jet, Israel, and I'd think very carefully if I were you about how you want him to find me when he does." Down at the strip, the jet rolled to a stop. The stairs came down, and the whole rooftop restaurant, 30 floors of the city's beautiful people, pressed toward the glass to watch. She still doesn't fully know what he is. That's the part I need you to hold on to. AYLLA knows Minchan is wealthy. You don't miss a private jet. What she doesn't know, what Israel is about to find out in the worst way, is exactly how much power just landed at the harbor. If you're ready to watch the room turn, comment she was never alone. Now watch him climb those stairs. He didn't rush. That was the first thing everyone noticed about the man who came up from the harbor. He moved through the restaurant's private elevator and out onto the rooftop unhurried. Calm. A tall figure in a black shirt with silver chains at his throat and dark ink on one forearm. Black hair a little wild. Dark eyes sweeping the room once and finding exactly what they were looking for. And the staff reacted before anyone else. The manager who'd been filming went white and shoved his phone in his pocket. The maitre d' straightened like a soldier. A waiter actually stepped backward, out of the man's path without being asked, because the staff knew. In this city, the people who worked the high-end rooms always knew. That was Ju Min-chan. And you did not film Ju Min-chan. You did not get in his way. You did not, under any circumstances, want to be the reason he was unhappy. Israel didn't know any of that. Israel, still holding the plate, saw a man walking toward his ex-girlfriend and made the single worst assumption of his life, that this was just some guy. Hey, Israel started, puffing up. This is a private conversation, buddy, so you can just... Min-chan didn't even look at him. He walked straight past Israel like he was a piece of furniture and stopped in front of AYLLA and took in the whole picture. The wine dripping from her hair, the ruined white dress, the plate still hovering in another man's hand, the 40 people watching. His jaw tightened, just slightly. You're wet, Min-chan said to her gently. It wasn't a question. I'm okay, AYLLA said. You're not, but you will be. He shrugged off his jacket, the jacket probably worth more than Israel's car, and settled it around her wine-soaked shoulders without a second thought for the stain. He didn't glance at the watching room. He didn't perform a single second of it for the crowd. There was only her. I'm sorry I was late. Traffic in the air, if you can believe it. His dark eyes stayed on her face. You waited. I saw you from the window. You always wait. Some people are worth waiting for, she said, and her voice only shook a little. He reached up and brushed a wine-damp curl off her cheek, and for a moment the danger drained completely out of his face, leaving something underneath that only she ever got to see. You held it together, he murmured, just for her. The whole time, I watched you do it. Do you know how many people could have sat in that chair and not given him what he wanted? He shook his head. Almost none. You didn't cry for him. Good. Save them. You never have to spend another tear on a man who was never going to catch them. I wasn't going to break in front of him, AYLLA whispered. Not again. I know, Min-chan said. That's my girl. That's exactly who I fell for. Then he straightened, and his hand settled at the small of her back. Steady, certain, claiming without a word, and the softness folded away. Min-chan almost smiled. Then finally, slowly, he turned to Israel. Now, he said, and his voice didn't rise at all, which was somehow the most frightening thing about it. You're the one who threw wine on her. He's not shouting. He's not swinging. And that's exactly why the whole room just got quiet in a different way. Because everyone who knows who he is understands that a calm Ju Min-chan is far more dangerous than an angry one. Israel's about to learn who he's been mocking. Watch him try to talk his way out of it. Okay, look, man, this is a misunderstanding, Israel said, the plate lowering, his bravado leaking out of him. This is between me and her. It's an ex thing. You know how it is. I know she asked you to leave, Min-chan said. 3 times. I heard it from the elevator. He tilted his head. I know you poured a drink on a woman's head in a room full of people because she wouldn't cry for you. I know you called her alone and unwanted. A pause. And I know you did it on the one night she was waiting for me. So no, I don't think it's a misunderstanding. I think it's the clearest thing I've seen all week. Do you know who Israel started, an empty reflex. No, Min-chan said. I don't know who you are. That's exactly the problem for you. He let that sit. Everyone in this room knows who I am. Ask the manager. Ask the man who just hit his phone. Ask why the staff won't make eye contact with me. His dark eyes never left Israel. You walked in here to prove she was nothing, and you did it in front of the one person in this city you should have prayed was never watching. At a nearby table, An elderly woman who'd been watching the whole thing leaned over to her husband and whispered loudly enough to carry, "Oh, he's finished. That poor stupid boy has no idea he's finished." "Should we tell him?" The husband whispered back. "Absolutely not. This is the most fun I've had at dinner in years." A ripple of stifled, nervous laughter moved through the frozen room, and Israel's ears went red. Jasmine had gone very still. She'd stopped touching Israel's arm. You could see her doing the math, the jet, the name, the terrified staff, the jacket worth a car, and arriving, far too late, at a number she did not like. "Israel," she whispered, "Israel, let's go." "The lady's right," Minchan said pleasantly. "You should go, but first." He gestured, and two men who'd come up quietly from the jet stepped forward, not touching anyone, just present, just enormous and calm. "You're going to apologize to her. Not because I'm making you, because for the rest of your life, I want you to remember that you stood in a beautiful room, on top of the world, and you chose to be small. And it cost you everything you were about to find out you wanted. And here's the twist that makes this land. Minchan doesn't hurt him. He doesn't have to. Because the worst thing you can do to a man like Israel isn't violence. It's making him watch the woman he threw away get everything while he stands there holding an empty plate. Keep watching, because the karma isn't done, and it's about to get poetic." Israel's mouth opened and closed. The apology wouldn't come. His pride wouldn't let it. And in the end, he just grabbed Jasmine's wrist and pulled her toward the elevator, fleeing the room he'd walked into like a king. But the city is small at the top. Here's what Israel didn't know as he rode that elevator down in shame. The client his failing business had been chasing for months, the investor who was going to save him, the deal he'd been bragging about to anyone who'd listen, was one of Ju Minchan's companies, and Minchan had just watched him throw wine on a woman's head. By Monday, the deal was gone. No explanation, just doors that stopped opening, calls that stopped coming, the specific quiet way the powerful would draw their hand and let a man discover how much he was leaning on it. Israel's business, already fragile, folded within the month. And Jasmine had never been in it for Israel. She'd been in it for the winner. The morning she understood Israel wasn't going to be won, she was gone, off to find someone whose story was still going up. The same woman who'd laughed while wine dripped down AYLLA's face walked out of Israel's life without a backward glance and left him exactly as alone as he tried to make AYLLA feel. Nobody planned it. Nobody plotted it. Israel simply met the consequences of who he already was. On the worst possible night, in front of the worst possible witness. And here's the small, perfect detail that finished him. A week later, that video the manager had been filming, the one he'd shoved in his pocket the second Minchan walked in, that surfaced online anyway, uploaded by one of the 40 guests who'd watched the whole thing. But it didn't go viral the way Israel had hoped his little show would. It went viral the other way. Millions of views of a man throwing wine on a calm woman's head, calling her unwanted, right before a jet with her name on it descended behind him like the sky itself had come to disagree. The comments were an ocean, and not one of them was on Israel's side. The way she never even flinched. He mistook her peace for weakness. Rookie mistake. Not the jet, though. Strangers who would never meet AYLLA appointed themselves her defenders by the 100,000. And Israel, who had spent his whole life needing an audience, finally got the biggest one of his life, watching him lose. Nobody planned that either. It was just the truth, doing what the truth eventually does when enough people finally see it. The rooftop had cleared. The manager had comped the entire evening and then some, tripping over himself. And AYLLA stood at the glass railing in Minchan's jacket, the ruined white dress beneath it, looking out at the jet that still glowed with her name. "Okay," she said finally. "You have to tell me. The jet. My name in 10-foot letters. Minchan, what is all this? Who are you really?" Minchan came to stand beside her at the railing, quiet for a moment. "You never asked," he said. "In 6 months, you never once looked me up, never asked what I was worth, never asked what I could do for you. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone who meets me is calculating. You just put me to work holding drape rods and thank the catering staff by name. That's not an answer." "I know." He turned to her. "I'm not only a businessman, AYLLA. The building, the companies, those are real. but they're the part I show people. There's a part I don't show. I came up in a world that runs on fear. My family, the people I answer to, the people who answer to me, now it's not a gentle world. It's why the staff here are afraid of me. It's why those men came off the jet. He watched her face carefully. I've kept you away from it on purpose. Because the day I met you, you were the first person in years who saw me. Not what I could give you, not what you should be scared of. Just a man holding a drape rod. And I didn't want to lose that. AYLLA was quiet for a long moment. 6 months, she said. You could have told me any time. Why tonight? Because tonight I watched a man throw wine in your face for the crime of waiting for me, Min-chan said, and for the first time his calm cracked, just a little, and something raw showed underneath. And I realized that keeping you separate from my world wasn't protecting you. It was leaving you undefended. Israel looked at you and saw a woman with no one behind her. That's the last thing I ever want anyone to see when they look at you again. He shook his head. So I'm done keeping it a secret. I'd rather you know exactly what stands behind you now. And what's that? Everything I have, he said simply, which is a great deal. AYLLA let out a breath that was half a laugh. You landed a jet with my name on it to make a point. I landed a jet with your name on it, Min-chan corrected gently, because I've spent my whole life watching my name make people afraid. And I wanted just once to put a name on something and have it mean the opposite, have it mean safe, have it mean home. He looked at her. Your name, not mine. That was the whole point. AYLLA was quiet. The jet, she said, the name. I was going to surprise you tonight, 1 year. A rare, almost shy pull at the corner of his mouth. I had your name put on it because I wanted you to see it come home and understand something I'm not good at saying out loud, that you're not a woman I'm dating. You're not a secret, and you're not a decoration. He held her eyes. You're the one thing in my whole dangerous life I decided to protect completely, from everything, including apparently a man with a wine glass. There it is, the thing Israel could never understand. He spent a year trying to make AYLLA feel like she was worth nothing. And the man who actually loved her put her name on a jet, not to show off, but because he'd finally found the one person on earth he wanted to keep safe. That's the difference between a man who shrinks you and a man who lifts you. Stay for the last scene. It's the one that'll get you. You're not scared, Min-chan said. It sounded almost like a question. I just told you what I am. Most people would be scared. AYLLA considered it, honestly, the way she considered everything. I spent a year with a man who was soft on the outside and cruel underneath, she said. He never lifted a hand to me. He just made me smaller every day and called it love. She looked at the jacket around her shoulders, at the man beside her. You've got a dangerous life and a gentle heart. Israel had a safe life and a cruel one. I know which one I trust. A small smile. Turns out it's not about how dangerous a man is. It's about who he's dangerous for. Min-chan looked at her like she'd handed him something he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. For you, he said quietly. In case that wasn't clear, I'm dangerous for you. I gathered that. The jet gave it away. He laughed, on the real one, the one almost nobody got to hear. And the sound of it filled the empty rooftop. Then he took her hand, and he led her not to the elevator but back to the table, the ruined anniversary table, and he signaled, and the staff came alive, fresh linens, the wine cleared away, and from the jet, a whole second dinner arriving, and a small cake with a single candle, and her mother's favorite flowers that she'd mentioned once months ago in passing that he'd somehow remembered. You planned all this, she said, tearing up. The real dinner. It was down there the whole time. Every bit of it. He nodded toward the jet. The musicians are on board. The trip's real too? 3 days, no phones, somewhere you've always wanted to see. I was going to walk in tonight, hand you a glass of something ridiculous, and tell you I'd been planning it for 3 weeks. That was the whole evening. His jaw tensed briefly. I didn't plan the part where I walked in and found a man emptying a plate on you. That part wasn't in it. I know. She reached across and touched his hand. You couldn't have known. I should have come sooner. Min-chan. She waited until he looked at her. You came with a jet. I think we can call it even. That got the laugh out of him again, the rare one, and he shook his head, and some of the coldness that had lived in his face since he saw the wine finally let go. I told you I was worth waiting for. He pulled out her chair, the way you pull out a chair for someone you honor. Happy anniversary, AYLLA. I'm sorry your first one started with wine in your hair. You know what's funny? She sat, wine-stained dress and borrowed jacket and all, and laughed through the tears. For a second up here before the jet, I almost believed him. Israel. For 1 second I sat there thinking maybe he's right. Maybe I am the kind of woman who ends up alone. And now there's a jet with my name on it parked in a harbor and a man who remembered my mother's flowers. She shook her head, wiping her eyes. It's kind of hard to feel unwanted with all that going on. Good. Minchan sat across from her, the city glittering, the jet glowing gold behind them. Because here's the truth Israel will never understand, and I need you to hear it from me. You were never alone tonight, not for 1 minute. You were early, and I was late, and in between a small man tried to fill the gap with cruelty. But I was always coming, AYLLA. I will always be coming. The waiting was never if, it was only ever how long. He reached across the table and took her hand. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making the how long shorter and shorter until one day you look up before you even have to wait, and I'm already there. AYLLA looked at him and at the jet and at the ruined and remade dinner on top of the world. Everyone after this, Minchan said again softly, you'll never wait alone again. And AYLLA Okafor, who'd been mocked for coming alone, who'd been told she was unwanted in front of a room full of strangers, who'd spent a year being made small by a man who called it love, sat at a table on top of the world across from a man who'd landed a jet just so she'd know she was never ever alone, and she finally, fully believed it. Israel mocked her for sitting alone, but she was never alone. She was just waiting for the right person to show up. And when he did, he didn't come to rescue a helpless woman. He came home to the strongest one he'd ever met, the one who put him to work, and thanked the staff by name and stepped between a stranger and the harm without thinking. He didn't make her worth something. He just refused to let the world keep telling her she wasn't. A week later, Israel, broke, abandoned, desperate, showed up at the lobby of one of Ju Minchan's buildings, demanding to clear the air, to explain, to fix it. He didn't get past the front desk. He stood in that marble lobby in a wrinkled shirt he hadn't changed in 2 days, rehearsing his speech, the apology, the explanation, the man-to-man he was sure he could talk his way into. And a security guard made one quiet phone call, listened, and hung up. A single message came down for him, delivered by that guard who didn't even look up from his monitor to say it. He says, you had a year to treat her like she mattered. I only needed 1 night to show her she did. Israel opened his mouth to argue. He also says, the guard added, that if you come back, it won't be a message next time. Have a good evening, sir. The door's behind you. And that was the whole of it. Israel stood there a moment longer, and then he understood. The way small men always understand things a beat too late. That there had never been an argument to win. He'd lost the second he mistook a strong woman's quiet for a weak woman's loneliness. Everything after that was just a bill arriving. But here's what Israel doesn't know yet, and what makes this far from over. He didn't come to that building just to apologize. He came because he'd found out something. Something about Ju Minchan's world, about that jet, about the dangerous life Minchan swore he'd keep AYLLA safe from. And when a desperate, humiliated man goes looking for leverage against a mafia boss, he's not just risking his own life. He's about to drag AYLLA straight into the one world Minchan built his whole heart around keeping her out of. That's chapter 2. It's already up. Tap it right now. And comment she was never alone. If AYLLA deserved every second of that ending, I'll see you there.